Welcome in, everybody, to week number 3 of the Summit Athletic Conference football season in Northeast Indiana. My name is Jeff Mahoney with Summit City Sports, and of course, we have Casey O'Boyle with us from Northeast Indiana GameNight. And wow, the first 2 weeks of football have been absolutely great. Everybody was highly anticipating the start of football season, and Casey, it has not disappointed.
It's been a lot of fun. There have been some surprises, and there's been some great individual performances. We've had upsets. We've had classic finishes, everything that you expect from Summit City Fort Wayne football. And it's so fantastic to see these kids playing. We're moving ahead, and I'm excited. We've got another great slate of games tonight.
We're going to take a look at the Summit City Sports Game of the Week, and it features two of the top quarterbacks really in the state. When you look at senior Deuce Taylor over at Northside and the junior Jeffrey Becker over at Carroll, both had big performances last Friday. Carroll went on to really handle Snyder pretty good. Northside lost to Bishop Dwenger. But when you look at this game right here, Northside's in the midst of their gauntlet. Okay, they opened up with Snyder. They had Dwenger in that fearsome defensive front seven. And now they got Carroll, another big 6A school. When you look at this game here, do you think Northside's going to be kind of have enough energy, if you will, after those first 2 weeks to give Carroll a good run?
Well, that's kind of the $1 million question, right? Are they fatigued from those week 1 and week 2 battles against some heavyweights in Snyder and Dwenger, or are they battle tested? That's the other side of the argument. They play a ton of two-way guys. I think they have 5 or 6 guys that are pretty regular on both sides of the ball. I think now going into week 3, maybe that benefits them to a certain degree. They should be more battle tested. It's not going to be real hot tonight as far as the weather is concerned. The humidity is down. It's going to be a gorgeous night for high school football. So from a nutrition standpoint, I think Northside's going to be just fine in that regard. Now, how they match up against a Carroll squad that scored 90 points basically in 2 halves of football is another story. I think it's a fantastic matchup. You touched on it already. You've got Deuce Taylor, 706 passing yards. He leads the area, of course. You've got Jeff Becker on the other side for Carroll, 546 passing yards, but he's also a very good runner. I think he's a better runner than Deuce. And if I had to single out either team right now, I would give Carroll a slight advantage because of that very reason. Jeff Becker's ability to run the ball when the pocket collapses or on some design runs, I think makes Carroll a slight favorite tonight.
Yeah, you can see here on the Max Preps, Carroll does not have their stats updated. They only have 1 game for Jeffrey Becker, but he would be right there behind Deuce Taylor. 706 yards after 2 games shows that Deuce is the real deal. And even last week, he had wide receivers making plays. One of those making one of the biggest plays I've seen so far this year for Bronte Johnson from Northside, the freshman wide receiver, taking it at about 60 yards to the house. He is an exciting wide receiver, only a freshman at 6'3", about 180 pounds.
Yeah, Tay Johnson, they call him Tay. He reminds me a lot of Selwyn Lyman, who people forget he started his career at Northside before transferring to Harding and doing some great things for the Hawks, who are no longer with us. The Harding Hawks, now defunct program or school, if you will. He made a name for himself at Harding, but he started as a freshman for Northside. And Tay Johnson reminds me a lot of Selwyn Lyman.
Yeah, and talking about making a name for himself, how about the Northeast Indiana GameNight Player of the Week in James Coverstone over there at Carroll? What a big night, 240 yards receiving.
Yeah, 10 receptions, targeted 12 times, 240 yards. And this is on the heels, of course, Jeff, of Mason Englert's huge performance in week 1. So if you're a defensive coordinator like Coach Causey over at Northside, you've got to be scratching your head because you can't just go in and focus on Jeff Becker. You can't just go in and focus on Mason Englert. Now you've got Jamison Coverstone, who puts up 240 yards, 10 receptions, basically in 1 half of play against Snyder. That's a headache for any defensive coordinator. And right now, Carroll's got, you're waiting for, okay, it's week 3. Is there another weapon that we're just not aware of yet that's going to emerge?
Yeah, looking at our second game, This is the Northeast Indiana game night game of the week. Northrop at Wayne. How exciting. Demarius Cowan, 485 yards rushing after 2 games and 7 touchdowns. Both of those are stat-leading performances after 2 weeks in the SAC and really in the area. Braden Hardwick behind him at 293 yards. So that's quite a distance right there. Cowan's putting himself from the rest of the group. We saw it from this Wayne team in week 1. They were able to make Bishop Dwenger kind of one-dimensional, shutting down the run a little bit. And here, Northrop has not shown this year that they can really throw the ball against SAC opponents. So this is a really intriguing matchup, not to mention the fact that Northrop's 2-0. If they started off the season 3-0, that'd be quite a milestone.
Yeah, Jeff, it would be the first time since 1983 if they go 3-0. So a lot of history at stake here for the Bruins. Uncle Buzz Dorfler, Jason, the head coach's uncle, was the head coach that year in '83. It was his last year at the helm. And the 2 losses that year for Northrop were against Bishop Dwenger during the regular season, 42-7. The Saints went on to win the 3A state title, their first of 5. And then Powerhouse Penn in Class 4A. And back then, you'll recall, Jeff, there was only 4 classes. So if you're going to lose to 2 teams, why not 3A and 4A state champions, arguably the best team in Northrop history. That being said, this year, Coach Jason Dorfler is doing some great things. This is, like you mentioned already, our ground and pound. This is our featured game, our hot ticket. You already talked about Demarius Cowan. What a season he's having. 69 carries, 34.5 carries per game, just unheard of. How long can that go on? And you know darn well Wayne's going to commit 8-9 guys in the box. They're going to be on man coverage. They're going to roll up their safeties, and they're going to say, no, somebody other than number 34 is going to beat us tonight. And Kareem Freeman, the lefty quarterback, he throws a good ball, but does he have enough weapons on the perimeter? CJ Davis is a sophomore, a guy to me, Jeff, that is somebody to keep an eye on tonight. He's a breakout player waiting to happen. He's going to have a big game one of these days in the aerial attack for Northrop. Is it tonight? Because Wayne's going to sell out to stop the run, no doubt about it. On the other side, you know, we talked about, again, in this particular article that you're featuring, the two-pronged attack, if you will, for Wayne's running game with Sean Collins, the junior. There is a good look at him right there, number 5. He's right now on our game night leaderboard, ranked 5th with 217 yards on 23 carries, combined with Chris Thomas, who actually started his career at Northrop. He started as a linebacker as a freshman for the Bruins. He transferred over to Wayne. He's the other half of that two-pronged attack for Coach Sherwood Haydock. Combine those two, Collins and Thomas, 42 carries, 362 yards, 8.6 yards per carry. And I think I told you earlier in the week, even though I think conventionally everybody's going to say Northrop is a 2 or 3 score favorite tonight, and rightfully so, I'm personally taking Wayne in an upset special because of that. What they showed to me in week 1 with their commitment to slowing Dwenger's ground game and the two-pronged attack as opposed to just one guy, I think really favors them. Hang on, I got a prop for you, Jeff. Hang on. I got to show you this. I just brought this back into the fold. This is my grandfather, Grandpa Pat, God rest his soul. He passed away actually before I was born in the 60s. I don't know if you can see this, but this is an original work of his. You can see the crusty paint drippings, 55, 60 years old. I don't have the original date. The backstory on this, Jeff, my good buddy Mike Carcione, who was a fantastic football player at Bishop Dwenger, was a Steelers fan. I was a Cowboys fan, okay? Back in the 70s and 80s, they did not like each other. This was in my basement, and unbeknownst to me, I gave this away to my good friend Mike Carcione, not knowing that it was the last piece of history that I had for my grandfather. Michael was good enough to take care of it for the last 40-some years. He just gave it back to me this week. I put it up on my wall. So a little bit of a family heirloom right there. Patrick O'Boyle was an artist, and he used to do billboards back before the digital age. P.D. O'Boyle. So the little history there for you. So at any rate, running back, hard-nosed, old-school football, ground and pound. That's why I'm so excited. I had to make this our game of the week. I'm so excited for this matchup.
Absolutely, and that's a great-looking photo right there. Aiden Meek, the quarterback over at Wayne, is this his game to break through? Looking at it, 79 yards passing in week 1 against Dwenger, 72 yards passing in week 2 against Bishop. Luers had an interception in both games, but he could be a difference maker here. Obviously, Sean Collins last year burst on the scene along with Keyshawn Fields over at Wayne, and he really is a star in the SAC. Anytime you can do that as a sophomore and now pick up right where he's left off as a junior, Coach Sherwood Haydock's got to love Sean Collins over there with the Generals. But do you feel like Aiden Meek might be the ultimate deciding factor in this game?
Well, it's a great point, Jeff. I think it's Aiden Meek, quarterback at Wayne, or Kareem Freeman, quarterback at Northrop, right? It's both these guys that are unheralded. Their numbers are very pedestrian through 2 weeks of action. Meek actually has more passing yards, almost double what Kareem has. And I think, but again, do they have the weapons? Cameron Tolles, only 2 catches for 20 yards this year for Wayne. He did have a lengthy touchdown called back, I believe, against Dwenger in week 1, late in that contest. And then Jamari Tab, here's a kid to keep an eye on. 6'4", really strong kid, tight end for Wayne. Sherwood Haydock last week told me we found a legit tight end. He had 4 receptions for 48 yards. He could be a difference maker as well because, again, these teams mirror one another in terms of what they want to do. I think both defenses are going to say, your quarterback's got to beat us tonight. We're not going to let the ball carriers dictate this. If they do, whoever wins that intimate battle, that rushing battle, I think it winds up victorious.
Wow, look at Jamari Tab, a senior, 6'4", 240 pounds. So that will be fun to watch over there at Wayne Stadium. The third game we're going to look at is Concordia at Snyder. What a start to the season here for Concordia. Not having Brandon Davis obviously set them back on the offensive side of the ball. They're in week number 2, but this defense is totally legit, Casey. We saw what they did in week number 1, holding Southside to negative 35 yards. And then in week number 2, getting 4 interceptions against Homestead and limiting the Spartans to just 7 points. I mean, I don't care who you are. That's a great performance. And Coach Manigault said at the beginning of the year, he loves the speed of his defense, and his defense has been answering the call.
The defense is fantastic. You got the Rusher boys. You've got Vanderbosch, Hudson, Gagline, Cam Johnson. I mean, this defense is loaded. And they actually forced two fumbles last week as well, 6 turnovers. Usually you get 6 turnovers, you win the game. They had 3 times in the red zone, twice, I believe, inside the 10, where they came up empty. And so you got to take your hat off to that Homestead defense. They were back at full strength. They looked like it. Luke Palmer, the Etchison kid, Ryan Burton, all difference makers. Kreiner kid, who started week 1, he's having a fantastic season, number 11. Homestead's defense is really good as well. But I agree with you. If Brandon Davis plays in that game, I think Concordia wins. Instead of losing 7-0, I think they win 21-7. I think he was that big of a loss. That being said, Eli Maddox, talking to Coach Manigault, it's my understanding that he'll get the start tonight. He's had a whole week to work with the number 1s, get his timing down. Most of his throws early in last week's game, Jeff, were just off a little bit. I'm sure you saw it as well. The timing was off. He was a little behind. The speed of the game, I think, caught up to him a little bit. I expect their game plan and his timing to be much, much better tonight against Snyder.
Eli Maddox, the sophomore quarterback, you see it right here, a 7 of 24 passing with an interception, 0 touchdowns. Still, with all that kind of, I don't want to call it chaos on offense, but when you go from a senior that's got 2 years of playing experience to a brand new sophomore, and I'm not sure how much of a heads up he had, like you just said, Amir Drew still rushing for 3.8 yards per carry. Concordia, well, we saw the numbers with 240 yards receiving from Coverstone and what Jeffrey Becker did, leading his team in rushing and throwing for over 300 yards. Is Snyder's defense kind of the answer to this young quarterback in Concordia to get back on track on offense?
Well, that's the big question. Here we go. Snyder opens up the season with Deuce Taylor and then Jeffrey Becker. and their secondary at times had just colossal breakdowns, unlike anything I've ever seen out at Snyder High School. But yeah, at that point, you got to tip your hat also to Carroll High School, Northside High School, their offensive coordinators, and those dynamic quarterbacks. With the exception of Brendan Lytle, they're not going to see anybody like that the rest of the way. The closest one would probably be Brandon Davis. So they kind of get a little bit of a reprieve tonight, do the Panthers, not having to face a 2-year starter, like you said, who threw for 2,400 yards a year ago. Eli Maddox is very capable, though. He threw some good balls last week. You got Luke Speckhard out wide. You got Tyler Grossman. They need to get back to more comeback routes, in my opinion, and then take a shot downfield when it's there. But again, Amir Drew is the point of emphasis for Snyder tonight. Keep him contained. You got a chance to win this game.
Really, really impressed with the performance by Cam Vanderbosch, the senior cornerback. Not only did he have the 2 interceptions, but the open field tackles he was making on Braden Hardwick, arguably one of the top running backs in Northern Indiana. Cam Vanderbosch is the real deal on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think Coach Donnelly, I think he did color commentary for that game, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And Pat did, and he did a fantastic job highlighting that defense, and especially Cam Vanderbosch. You're so right. He came up at least twice, if not 3 times, in critical moments, and just open field tackle, as you said, laid the wood on Braden Hardwick. He's a very elusive running back. He is one of the best DBs in the area, Cam Vanderbosch, making a name for himself for the Cadets.
Absolutely. Now going back over to Snyder, we saw Darren Swanson, the senior quarterback, complete 4 of 14 passes for 100 yards. Did not have a touchdown against Carroll. Did not throw an interception either. And then the sophomore Luke Hopper completed 2 of 3 passes for 19 yards. Are they going to continue with that dual quarterback system, do you believe, at Snyder?
I think so. I know Coach Tippmann's probably getting a lot of external pressure to make the switch to the sophomore Luke Hopper. I personally believe, and a lot of people disagree with me on this, I don't think their issues lie with their quarterback situation right now. I mean, you can say what you want about having one guy to focus on and be the leader of your offense and then roll with it, but I don't think that's the problem right now. I think their inability to run the ball, especially on first and second down, to set up down and distance scenarios that match their personnel offensively, has killed them. And then their defensive collapses have been, like I said earlier, colossal. I've never seen anything like it. There was a 3rd and 20 play last week against Carroll where they'd already stopped Carroll early in the game and forced a punt. 3rd and 20 where Becker made one of those typical Becker plays. I don't remember if it was to Englert or Coverstone or whom, but found an open receiver again on the back end of Snyder's defense where there was just a communication breakdown and a missed assignment, but it was glaring. It's those 3rd down plays, especially the 3rd and longs, that Snyder's just not making defensively. To me, that's what the biggest problem is right now. And you wonder if there's some chemistry issues and if there's some finger pointing going on, but that coaching staff, Coach Kurt Tippmann, he's a Snyder guy. He's a Russ Isaacs disciple. He will figure this out. They're going to be just fine. I think the fan base can be a little bit unruly, like they can at many programs in this area. And they need to be patient because they were playing a lot of first-year guys at the varsity level. And me personally, I do not think it's a quarterback problem. Now, there's the other side of the argument that sometimes when you have the old adage, you have 2 quarterbacks, it means you don't have any quarterback. There could be some truth to that. You got to go with whoever you think is the guy and ride him out. Right now, it's my understanding it's Darren Swanson.
Yeah, and looking at the running back position, do they have a new RB1 in Langston Level, the great from Blackhawk Middle School? 15 attempts for 89 yards. He averaged 5.87 yards per carry, led them with 88 yards rushing. Tyrese Brown had 8 carries for 19 yards. Are they going to turn it over to the sophomore there at Snyder?
It's feeling like it. Last week, watching that game last week, it sure felt like Langston Lavelle is the guy. Tyrese Brown, I think we had high expectations for, like everybody else. But, 8 carries, 19 yards, not what you expect from a Snyder running back. I don't know if he's trying to bounce outside too much and extend plays instead of getting more north-south. But, yeah, clearly, you got to be able to run the ball at a little bit more of a higher clip successfully for for Snyder to be successful. They're just not getting it. They're not getting that production from their passing game. I don't think they've got the playmakers on that side of the ball either. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a kid like Tavarius Jones go play some offense, get him in the slot, find an opportunity. He's been great in the return game. At some point, again, are we overreacting? They may have lost to two of the top three teams in the SAC, in Northside and Carroll, these last couple of weeks. And they did some good things in both games, but those back end collapses with their secondary have to be cleaned up, or they could lose 3 in a row tonight for the first time ever.
Do you have any update on the transfer defensive lineman Ison Robinson?
I don't. Last I checked with Coach Tippmann, he was still not cleared yet by the IHSAA. That would definitely help them. I mean, I think their defensive line is really good anyways. But you add a Division I prospect like Ison Robinson, the son of former Panther great Jabbar Robinson, they're going to be better. But to my knowledge, he's still practicing with the team, but has not been cleared yet by the IHSAA. Perhaps something changed here in the last day or two.
Well, next we'd like to look at Homestead traveling to Bishop Luers. Homestead now with a 1-1 record. Bishop Luers with a 1-1 record after winning that shootout at Wayne last week, where Carson Clark really kind of established himself as a real passing threat in the Summit Athletic Conference. And you know, Coach Lindsay loves to pass the ball, always has explosive offenses there at Bishop Luers. This really seems like an intriguing matchup.
I think it's going to be closer, perhaps, than some people are thinking. Would not be shocked at all if Luers pulled a shocker tonight, because I think they've got those kind of weapons. I worry about their defense and their ability to shut Homestead down. Evan Ornsby, again, a first-year guy who actually used to be a lineman. We found out just the other day he was more of a lineman, unlike his big brother, and was thrust into duty this year with Luke Goody deciding to skip his senior year and focus on basketball. He's done a pretty decent job, all things considered. I think he threw some good balls last week as well. When you've got Jared Kistler and Ethan Chambers out wide, two Indiana State recruits, you've got the playmakers on that side of the ball for that passing game to develop. Right now, everybody's saying we're going to focus on Braden Hardwick. And so it's kind of like out at Northrop, but maybe not at that extreme. Until somebody takes him away, then they're going to be in the game. But out at Luers, defensively, I think that's the key tonight. Can they somehow stop Braden Hardwick and force Homestead to throw? Will be clearly the key matchup to keep an eye on. But you're showing it, Braden Hardwick, 293 yards, and those are hard-earned yards. I mean, he's played against a couple really good defenses these last 2 weeks in Northrop and Concordia, and has had to earn everything because they're loading up the box against him. Carson Clark last week, 14 for 21, I believe 264 yards. He looked like the Carson Clark that we saw in the scrimmage against Northside. Big confidence booster for him, and I think their receivers, Nick Thompson is a kid to keep an eye out. I think he's going to be a fantastic player here in the future. And Brody Glenn right now, I think he's an unheralded guy also. Big, tall, 6'1" receiver, goes up and high points the ball really well. Another kid to keep an eye on in tonight's matchup against Homestead.
You know, how about this guy to keep an eye on right here? I'm going to highlight him for you. Krishan Menson. Menson had one catch for 29 yards and a touchdown. He can flat out fly. Is Krishan Menson a guy that we're going to be mentioning more and more in the upcoming weeks?
Yes, Jeff, I'm glad you brought his name up. Krishan Menson, he also had an interception last week in that victory over Wayne. He had a pick six against Deuce in Northside, granted in a scrimmage, but he breaks on the ball about as well as any DB in the area. He's obviously an offensive playmaker, especially in the slot, in the seam. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw him on some jet sweeps and things like that as we move forward. But again, another dynamic playmaker for a Luers team that has a lot of young guys, sophomores and juniors, playing key roles. Plenty of talent, but against a 6A power like Homestead, can they stick around and give themselves some confidence in the second half? That's the question.
Absolutely. Next game we'd like to look at is Southside at Bishop Dwenger. Casey, I saw Dwenger last week. I'm sorry. That defensive front seven has got to be one of the most fierce front sevens, especially with Cable there in the middle. Last week, the defensive lineman leaped up with his, 30-inch vertical, leaped up in the air and blocked a PAT. They're athletic. They fly to the ball. They kind of remind you of those Bill Belichick defenses from New England, where they've got linebackers coming at you from all over the place when you're talking about John Michael Fabini. And it seems like everything starts with Devin Tittman, who truly is just a beast out there on the field.
Yeah, Jeff, you summed it up beautifully. Dan Nepper, the defensive coordinator, first-year defensive coordinator for Bishop Dwenger, was our coach of the week. And I think rightfully so. The big question mark coming in was, how can Bishop Dwenger contain Deuce Taylor after what they did to Snyder in week 1? And the key was, and I think we talked about this a week ago, could the Saints get pressure on him from different angles, different places, and get him off his spot? The Snyder Panthers never really blitzed in week 1 against Northside. Their front four managed to get pressure, but it wasn't difference-making pressure. They probably got plenty of QB hurries, but Deuce was able to still throw off his back foot and look pretty comfortable for the whole night. Last week, he did not look that comfortable against that front seven, like you said. And I think Coach Nepper did a fantastic job mixing up his blitz packages, sending different linebackers on different down and distance scenarios, and really, pushed all the right buttons in that 27-14 victory for the Saints.
Brendan Lytle, I'm really impressed with the senior QB. He really is a manager of that offense. And it just goes back to saying, I love Coach Garrett because he plays so many guys, and he knows it's a marathon and not a sprint. But he's able to do that while still racking up wins. And what I mean by that, he's not putting too much of a load on one single player. Brendan Lytle, again, a great completion percentage, 62%, 8 of 13 passing. And I'm telling you what, in that game, he was scrambling around while keeping his eyes downfield. And every single time he found Rocco Sioka, it was for big yardage. Sioka, once again, had a great week, easily could have been on the Summit City Sports top 10 players. 6 receptions for 127 yards. At 6'4", 190 pounds, he has really soft hands. And they still haven't even gotten the tight end, Jack Tittman, really involved in the passing game over there. So it just looks like Dwenger is going to continue to grow offensively, almost like Coach Garrett's not showing too many of his cards right now.
Well, he's got a lot of cards. And so he's literally playing, a hand of poker with about 4 or 5 extra cards under his thigh sitting at the card table. And he's, it's a great luxury to have. A lot of these players, you don't have to have a Demarius Cowan rush 69 times in 2 weeks at Bishop Dwenger to be successful. And to your point, you're keeping guys fresh, you're keeping them hungry, you're keeping defensive coordinators somewhat guessing and on their toes. Brendan Lytle has been fantastic, 19 of 29 for 324 yards. A lot of people would be like, wow, that's not that impressive. That's pretty impressive. Completing 2/3 of your passes, no picks this year, I believe. Very efficient. Now that Henry O'Keefe, this is another name to keep an eye on, is in the mix. He had to be quarantined along with a few other guys. He is back tonight. He's going to be in the slot. He's by far their most explosive player in open space. That will keep people from doubling up Rocco Sioka. He is a difference maker on that side of the ball for the Saints. Not that the Southside Archers needed to hear that tonight.
Yeah, and on the other side, Southside 0-2. Tough start to the season, being outscored 64-7 in the first 2 games. Concordia, obviously a very good team. Northrop at 2-0, looking to do big things they haven't done in over 30 years. But Southside, probably not going to be the week that they turn it around and pick up their first win. But what are they building upon?
Well, they're improving week by week. Again, we talked about it, negative 35 yards, 1 first down in their opener against Concordia last week. I think over 150 yards of offense, 8 first downs. It's just progress right now for Coach Norfleet. He still has a young team, a lot of juniors, sophomores and juniors playing key roles. The key for them is to, stay the course, play Southside football, be physical, play the game the right way. Don't get caught up in wins and losses or where you're at in the standings, and improve week by week. And I think that's the approach right now for Coach Norfleet. And from week 1 to week 2, there was market improvement, and that's all you can ask for as a coach.
Yeah, Norfleet, 5 of 14 passing for 68 yards and rushing the ball. We had one rush from White Allen, who's a junior. He had a 7-yard carry. So they're getting a lot of different guys involved. If there's one player that's really standing out to you that you think could maybe take a leadership role here with the Archers, who's that one player you're looking at?
Well, it's maybe a couple. I mean, you got Maxwell Burney, who's a defensive stalwart. You got Travis Hapner, who plays on both sides of the ball, one of the best punters in the area. Jalen Lattimore. I'm not sure they have that one true emotional vocal leader, though. From talking to some of my sources over there, I'm not sure they have that yet. So hopefully somebody emerges and they step forward, because they've got to have it. You've got to have some of those senior leaders. Maxwell Burney would be one of them. So I don't know if there is one right now. I think Roosevelt Norfleet Jr., who is a junior, is a pretty quiet kid, is my understanding. But you need somebody to grab the bull by the horns and say, let's go. Let's play Southside football. Let's go out and punch them in the mouth and see what we can do. And I'm not sure they have that guy right now.
Well, our final game we're going to look at, Norwell's traveling to Leo. A tough week for Leo last week. New Haven's on the road at Pioneer, and Norwell has started the season here 2-0. They got a really nice sophomore class over there, a good-looking defense. We haven't really talked about Norwell since the Pearson Harnish days, but they're really turning things around over there in Ossian, Indiana. Yeah,
they are. We featured them this week in game night. 2-0, something to keep an eye on. Like you mentioned, that defense. Max Ringer is a name to circle on your roster tonight. Hard-nosed running back. If Norwell's able to run the ball with some success, they'll be in good shape to possibly pull off an upset. And again, their quarterback, that's the kid that stands out. His name escapes me right now. Eli Riley. He's the one that on film these last 2 weeks, Heritage and Leo's coaches both have said right off the bat, this is the guy that you have to stop. This is a kid that's a dynamic playmaker. He's not Chandler Harnish, a former Norwell fame, but he's a pretty good athlete, and he's a dual threat kind of kid. If he has some success, especially with some design rollouts, maybe some play action passes, especially early on down and distance situations, 1st and 10 type situations, to soften that Leo defense up, they might stick in it. On the other side, though, Leo, we talked about this already. Kudos to the Leo Lions leadership, their administration, their coaches, athletic directors, for finding a way to play football a week ago on basically a day's notice against a state-ranked Mooresville team. They lost 34-17, but I tell you what, Jeff, I think that decision will pay dividends 100-fold by the end of the season, because it tells me, no, we're not taking a week off. We know we're not going to be able to prepare for a very, very good state-ranked team, but we're going to battle them, and we're going to play our very best, and we're going to get reps, which our kids need. And they actually were in that game for quite a while. 34-17 to the Mooresville Pioneers is nothing to be ashamed of, and Leo will benefit from that decision.
Yeah, any update there at Angola? That's who their week 2 opponent was supposed to be. Are they playing football this week?
I don't think so. I think they might be off another week. I'd have to I checked that a few days ago, and off the top of my head, Jeff, I forget. I think they might still be out of the mix. I believe DeKalb might be coming back. Again, you lose track of this kind of stuff. Who's out for a week? Who's out for 2 weeks? Are we, we played this team in quarantine, and this, somebody coughed on this guy. It's hard to keep up with it right now, and I feel bad for those kids at those programs, DeKalb and Angola here locally, because it's unfortunate. They've had a good chunk of their season already interrupted, and you wonder what the long-term effect is for the rest of the season when they do get back to playing.
So we will not have New Haven live this week, but shout out to the Bulldogs, who are 2-0 in the Northeast 8 Conference. They're one of 4 teams that are undefeated, along with Columbia City, East Noble, who last year finished state runner-up, and Norwell. But Casey, those 2 linebackers over at New Haven are ferocious. When you look at Isaac Carswell and Dre Wright, when you look at two linebackers, you got Maxwell and Moon over at Snyder. You got Tippmann and John Michael Fabini over there at Bishop Dwenger. Wright and Carswell are really making a name for themselves this year.
Yeah, you've got to put those two guys in that conversation, no doubt about it. DeAndre Wright has been on our postseason team the last couple of years. He made it as a sophomore. He made it as a junior. Feels like he's been there forever. I'm sure Northeast 8 folks feel like he has been because he's a difference maker and a really, really good tackler. This Pioneer team is very efficient running the ball. They do a lot of veer option stuff. They just beat a 6A Chesterton squad last week by one score. So this is going to be an intriguing game. Lewis Cass, that's another really good 2A program that Pioneer put it to. Look at that coach, Adam Berry, 54-3 during his time with Pioneer. I think they should be a 1A program, but because of success, they've been bumped up to 2A. This is not an easy matchup for New Haven, but the good news is they've got the size, the physicality, the athletes, and the depth to match up with Pioneer. Whether or not they can go down there and win is another story. But this is going to be a fun game to watch. If it was here locally, I might actually be making a small car ride over to New Haven.
Well, absolutely. And it's going to set up a nice week number 4 when Leo and New Haven do battle, a big NE8 contest there.
Yeah, I think that's got a good chance to be our hot ticket for week 4, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself.
Absolutely. Well, Casey, thank you so much. 2 weeks of football in the books. And after tonight, we'll have 3 weeks. So thank you to everybody that have been helping, from the athletic trainers, the coaches, the administration, to get these games on for us. We love it so much. And I know the guys are having fun out there as well.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a good point, Jeff. Thank you for everybody's support, for, again, plowing ahead. It's been a difficult trek these last few months. So great that we're playing high school football. It's been a lot of fun.
And not to mention that this week we should have a few fans in the stands.
That'll help. That'll be really exciting. It was nice to bring some extra copies of GameNight out to the school today, and it'll be really exciting to see some people in the stands and hear some of that crowd noise.
And Casey, for those that want to pick up a hard copy, I know they're kind of scattered throughout Fort Wayne, but where are some of the good places to go to pick up a hard copy version of Northeast Indiana Game Night?
Well, there's the Jerry's Burger Marathon store out southwest by Wayne High School. Not southwest, out south by Wayne High School. There's Lakeoff's, Laser X, Tom Steel Tire, Combat Ops. There's a lot of places out north like that have them as well. And then, of course, all the schools locally that we cover, there's bundles that are out there, certainly for the home games as well, for those few ticket holders that are able to go to the games tonight.
Well, Casey, enjoy your Friday night watching football, and we'll look forward to see who the Northeast Indiana Game Night Player of the Week is after week number 3. So
absolutely.
Enjoy your football Friday.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Folks, that was our week 2 preview of Northeast Indiana football. My name's Jeff Mahoney. That's Casey O'Boyle, and we'll be back next week. Big shout out there to James Coverstone. He picked a big game there to shine, 240 yards against the Panthers. Everybody enjoy your football Friday. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.